Hello and welcome to Nephrology Nursing Perspectives, an official podcast of the American Nephrology Nurses Association. This podcast provides interviews and discussions between members of the American Nephrology Nurses Association and the nephrology community. The podcast focuses on nephrology nurses' issues, health policy, and nephrology nursing as a specialty nursing profession in the areas of conservative management, peritoneal dialysis, hemodialysis, continuous kidney replacement therapies, acute kidney injury, transplantation, industry, and health policy. In this episode, Ms. Lillian Pryor, the 2020-2021 President of the American Nephrology Nurses Association, talks with Dr. Loretta Jackson Brown, the Senior Health Communications Specialist and Team Lead, Education, Campaigns, and Implementation for the National Center of Injury Prevention at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and a leader within the American Nephrology Nurses Association. Here, Dr. Brown discusses her career journey, some of her experiences leading up to her nursing career, how she was introduced to nephrology nursing, her involvement with the American Nephrology Nurses Association, her mantra for her own personal goals, and the importance of owning your practice. We are pleased to present Ms. Pryor's interview with Dr. Brown.
Hello, everyone. This is Lillian Pryor, your host of the Nephrology Nursing Perspectives podcast, and I am here, privileged to be here tonight with Dr. Loretta Jackson Brown. We are going to have a little discussion around the topic of personal mastery, and she's going to take us a little bit on her career journey, her personal mastery journey. So by way of introduction, Dr. Loretta Jackson Brown currently works for the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, as the Senior Health Communications Specialist and Team Lead for Education, Campaigns, and Implementation. She is a longtime member of ANNA, the Dogwood chapter, of course, here in Georgia. She currently serves as ANNA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee Chair, which is a newly formed committee. And most recently, she has been assigned or asked to be a principal advisor for the Diversity, Equity, Belonging, Inclusion, and Accessibility, DBIA. We love acronyms, right? So DBIA, also for the CDC, which is the National Center of Injury Prevention at the CDC. So welcome, Loretta. How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me, Lillian.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here this evening.
Absolutely. I am thrilled. So like I said, we're just going to go on a little journey throughout your career. I'm going to stop at a couple of places, and I know it's been a quite interesting career, a quite impressive career. And I just want you to take us through a little bit of your journey. So we're going to start. Let's go back. Why nursing? What made you decide to go into nursing? And what was your vision for a career in nursing? Or did it start out with this vision for a career in nursing?
Definitely. So we'll go back to the beginning. I was exposed to what is known as the Health Occupation Students of America, HOSA, in high school. Many of my friends considered nursing, but in particular, I had my oldest sister who was in nursing school also at the time. I always knew that I loved the science, most of that now we kind of refer to as STEM courses. So that was very interesting to me. I will say, though, I did not have any direct role models in any STEM program. While my sister was in college, she was not enrolled in a four-year nursing program. She was at a community college. So I also didn't have anyone who had gone before me. So no one had gone off to a four-year school. That need to have, role models around you, particularly as you're trying to kind of figure out what's my gifts, what's my purpose. I didn't have those around me. And so stumbled a little bit in the beginning, trying to kind of find out where I could fit in. But I went ahead and HOSA kind of, helped give me some direction about nursing. And after HOSA, I applied to a four-year college, which is Florida State University, and was accepted. And that is where I earned my nursing degree. So I earned my baccalaureate degree in nursing, bachelor's in nursing science. I have a BSN. And that was my first formal education into nursing. At Florida State, I then was exposed to Air Force nursing. It was at a career day at Florida State. And I said, hey, why not? It was back then where you only had a small window of opportunity to actually serve. And I thought, well, let me go ahead and do it. If I don't like it, I can always get out, but I may not ever have another chance to get in. And so I was commissioned as a second lieutenant about 3 weeks after I graduated from Florida State. I entered active duty Air Force. My first assignment was at Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas. I started training on what is known as a medical floor. The great thing about the Air Force is the expectation of technical skills is expected, right? And so the need and thought that, you should be a great nurse. That's what we hired you up and groomed you to be an officer. And so that is where I really began to hone my leadership skills. I took on various roles because we always had additional duties as assigned. And so you always had to find other things to do within the hospital, within the community as well. And one of those things that I did was I used to do cardiac rehab for patients who had experienced a myocardial infarct. And so I would lead some training at the gym as well for there. From there, I went into critical care nursing after the medical floors, and then was reassigned to Biloxi, Mississippi, Keesler Air Force Base. And that is actually where I entered nephrology nursing.
Okay. So now that's interesting because as we're talking about personal mastery, that involves personal growth. It involves belief, commitment, and a little bit of knowing yourself. And I think just the fact that initially you didn't have like that guidance and that mentorship to kind of point you in a certain direction one way or the other. How did you, I guess, just start to process where this path might lead you? So from HOSA, you got a little bit of direction. Florida State University kind of, I guess, maybe took you a little bit further. And then the Air Force, like that came just as an opportunity that you took on that eventually, I guess, kind of just led you into that nursing frame of mind and kind of kept you there. When did you begin to start putting the pieces together?
Definitely surrounding myself in an environment where the expectations are high, that the bar is set that, you will perform, right? And so you're in the science field, I'm around people who are all exceeding. So being an Air Force officer, there's always this sense of what else can I do? What else can I learn? I would say there probably was an innate piece in me as well, that I had a sense that I believed in myself as well. And I know everyone doesn't have that, and you kind of have to gain that over the years. Like anyone else, I struggle with, can I really do this? Is this really possible? But building up that belief. And so each time that I attempted something that I didn't think that I could really do, I began to build more and more confidence. I'm actually recalling a story early on. I used to be what we call staff development officer on the medical floor. And the medical floor, we would say, had any ages from 8 days to 108. So we care for patients across the spectrum. And a pediatric, I never thought I was really good in peds. And we had to teach about croup and how to set up these tents. And I had the respiratory therapist all scheduled to come to do an in-service on that, and they couldn't come. And so I then had to say, okay, Loretta, you can do this. So I did what it took for me to study it, for me to learn it, for me to, see one, do one, teach one. And I was able to actually do that in-service training myself. And so that, again, kind of builds that confidence that, hey, you know what, if I can really apply myself, if I have to do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, as long as I keep applying myself and I can learn it for myself, then I'm able to show someone else how to do it as well. So I think that skill, essentially having those doubts, but still having the courage to overcome those doubts, is important.
Absolutely. And just taking a look at your resume, for me, what stands out, you've had so many different pathways, I guess, right? So you've had opportunities and you've taken advantage of those opportunities. You were a little probably timid. And like you said, I'm not sure that I can do this, but wait a minute. Let me at least try to do this. And I think from what I know of you, that tenacity and just that commitment and knowing yourself and who you are, you always bring your A game to whatever it is that you're doing. That just kind of, I think, caused you to have that more confidence, but then to blossom and just knowing yourself when opportunities come, you're okay and you're courageous enough and you're not afraid enough to kind of take that opportunity. And you don't talk yourself out of stuff. I'll put it that way. I have an opportunity.
Yeah, maybe I need to talk myself out of stuff.
Because I can remember sometimes myself, I'll be given an opportunity and before I know it in my head, I'm like, oh, I don't have that kind of experience and I probably won't be too good at it anyway. And I end up sometimes talking myself out of opportunities. But when you're talking about personal mastery, you got to have that courage sometimes. I'm learning that myself and I'm growing towards that. But I think that's awesome. And that's kind of what I picked up just from your story. When you have those opportunities, you take advantage.
Yeah, and I acquired a lot of kind of basic foundational things across the years that have helped me. And that is definitely one. All experiences matter. And, sometimes we look at things and we will label them as positive or negative. They're experiences. And each one is there to teach us something about ourselves, something about other people. It may be that we have to have a correction in ourselves, or it may be something that reflects that what we did was great, or our beliefs were great, or it resonates with us. It's affirming, right? Mm-hmm. As well. And so if I look at all things kind of happen as they should, and if I can show up and be present as well, that is really key in kind of seeing what am I really here for? Because I didn't think nephrology was really it. And like I said, it kind of appeared to me as a critical care nurse, was never on my radar as I want to do that when I grow up as well. But it actually just really, really was a good match for who I am as a person. And it really was there at a time that I was able to influence it. I was able to help others grow in it. I was able to also get involved in the association as well and kind of make connections. My dissertation work for my PhD is around it. But I also look at how other things are connected from that foundation and how it ties to, a lot of the work that I am doing today as I do work in a space of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility. And it's still very tied. So I think knowing that all things are connected, right, is a universal thought that we aren't in the separate phases of things, but we really are kind of connected. And I think when we can show up and be present, what is this moment trying to show me? What can I get out of it? How can I be better? I think self-reflecting. I remember kind of going home. I used to kind of swing days, nights every 4 weeks and always just kind of reflecting like, how can I improve that? I went to the med room 4 times because I forgot something. So how can I actually build something in to where I'm using my time better? How can I tie this practice with something else that I'm doing? So my brain was always in the sense of, I can't stay where I am. How do I get better? And I think applying that to my life, how can I be better? How can I be better? How can I make the surroundings and that I practice in and others practice in, whether it's the workplace, whether it's my community, looking at things for that perspective has really been a plus for me personally and professionally.
Excellent. What really resonates again with me is that there is no just one singular experience and how universally it's all related. I think of one of the theorists, Watson, I think it's Jean Watson, and she just talks about that as well, the universality of everything being connected in the way that we care about each other and then again about ourselves. So I want to just take a little turn. And we're going to start to talk a little bit about the American Nephrology Nurses Association and how that experience kind of fits into your growth and your personal mastery.
Okay, sure.
So tell me a little bit, how were you introduced to ANNA, or what was one of your first experiences with ANNA?
I was introduced to ANA as an Air Force nurse.
Okay.
And I think it's important. Nurses have opportunities to lead. The importance of setting that environment, that expectation with staff to get involved, because people are going to follow the leader. And if they see that they're supported in that, being connected to their professional association is important, and they understand the benefits, and that's being emulated by a manager, you're going to likely get, a good percent of staff that are going to do that. And that's exactly what I had. I had a nurse manager who basically told me, you will belong to ANNA. That's what she said. And I'm going to call her name out here. Her name is Molly Kuzik, and she was my first nephrology nurse manager in the Air Force. And not only did she say that, but she created space and opportunity for me to embrace ANNA. She funded me to attend what was then a clinical concerns meeting in fall in Washington, D.C. in ANNA. And from there, and I want to say that was 1993 when I went to my first ANNA clinical concerns meeting. And then quickly after that, I began meeting the requirements to become a certified nephrology nurse. And so I got my 2 years in. And then in 1995, I sat for my CNN. I remember where it was. It was the ANNA national meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I was Air Force captain at the time. And from there, I continued to use ANNA standards for practice. Then when I became a nurse manager, I emulated what was done for me, right? And so that same support and expectation with my team, we attended local meetings. By this time, I was now stationed in California, but was involved locally. Again, just working from that excellence, using the tools that ANNA provided, but setting that expectation. I became a volunteer leader with ANNA when I relocated to Georgia and got involved with the local Dogwood chapter. I think when my youngest was maybe 2 or 3 years old, seems like a lot of us, and they, saw me attending, and then it was like, do you want to be an officer? And so my first role as an officer, I was chapter secretary. Following that, I became chapter president, got more and more involved. Eventually, I held more and more volunteer roles to include a 2-year term on the board of directors. I have led committees as well. Also had the opportunity to publish in the Nephrology Nursing Journal, contribute to some task force, served on Speakers Bureau as well. I'm also the recipient of ANNA awards and scholarships and a grant, my research grant, my project on chronic kidney disease for my dissertation, and just influencing, a really ability to do as much as I want to do. One of the things that I am really proud of that I was able to do on the local level was I formed a Nephrology Nurse Knowledge Exchange, which was a strategic alliance with the ANNA chapters in Atlanta at the time, which was an end-stage renal disease network for the region as well, and was able to host exchange of knowledge for some key topics related to what was happening to patients and for nurses here in Georgia. So it was really great to be able to kind of do some evidence-based connection with that. And I kind of led that effort for a couple of years here in Georgia.
I remember that, how you spearheaded that. And I was a part of that. I was new to Georgia myself. Around that time, I had relocated and had only been here maybe about a year or two. And again, ANNA has this way of pulling you in, its members and the leadership. And you definitely were a mentor for me, a very good example of how to engage and to pull other nurses into the fold. And that nephrology nursing event and an opportunity had gone on. We were able to replicate that for a number of years for our Georgia chapter, our Dogwood chapter. But that event and just the events that followed, that came to be actually an annual event that the Dogwood chapter was able to provide, and all due to Loretta, you having a vision, right? and just having a commitment to doing something that you know was needed. You took the steps to kind of put that together, and then you followed through, and you were able to engage the other members of the Dogwood chapter to kind of come on with me, and let's get this done. And it was really a wonderful event. I certainly appreciate it, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your leadership and just your mentorship over these past couple of years. You've really helped me a tremendous amount. You just never know, right? You never know who's watching, and you never know who's picking up on what you're doing. And you've been a wonderful example to me in ANNA, and I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's very kind.
We're going to close up in a few minutes, but that topic, we talked about personal mastery, but that's all kind of part of leadership. And ANNA has a leadership committee, and we also have a leadership toolkit. Some of the topics that we talked about, personal mastery being one, you can find those in the leadership toolkit on the ANNA website. We have advocacy and policy, interpersonal effectiveness, leadership, evidence-based practice, which you mentioned, Loretta, and a host of other topics that have different sessions, I guess, that you can take, different domains, and that will help you, and that will serve as a resource for you to kind of grow and then start to think about your own personal mastery. So Loretta, as we tie this all together, when you think about personal mastery, and just from some of the things that you're telling me that you've done and the way you've taken advantage of your opportunities, if you had to give me a statement about personal mastery and just your personal vision, what would that be? How would you break that down?
Yeah, you've probably heard me say this before because it is really something that has become essentially my mantra, and that is own your practice and make it personal. And that came to me when I was working on my PhD. I was on a plane, and the gentleman sitting next to me at the time, he saw me. You know, when you're in school, you got your papers with you all the time. Everything you do is that your school life, right? Consumes you. And he saw me and he asked me what school I attended. And I said, Georgia State University. And he said, oh, my wife attended there and she had completed her PhD in like neuroscience, right? But when he heard me say that I was a nurse, I could like see his face light up even more, that, you know, I'm getting my PhD in nursing. That seemed to have more value in his face than when he was like, yeah, my wife had neuroscience. And I looked at him like, wow. And then he said to me, he said, where do you practice? He didn't say to me, where do I work?
Where do you work, right?
Who do I work for? He said to me, where do you practice? And we hear that for physicians, and we may even hear that for nurse practitioners. And I'm not even sure, they may still ask nurse practitioners, who do you work for? Where do you work? But this person, we know this because we hear that, you know, nurses are the most trusted profession for a number of decades now. And I thought, wow, he's right. It is my practice. Him saying that just really brought home to what I believe, because I would hear people say, why are you going back to school? They're not going to pay you anymore. You're not going to do this more. And
right.
It's about your practice. It's about how you show up at the bedside, at the chair side, in the meeting room, in the boardroom, in your interaction in the community, wherever you're interacting. That is the you that's showing up, and that is your practice. You don't turn that over merely because someone pays you a paycheck. They have definitely some proprietary knowledge because they're paying you to develop X, Y, and Z, but that's still your talent. Right. And so if you practice from the vantage point that I am showing up, I want this excellence that I'm doing when I'm interacting with this family, with this patient. This is my practice. And we take our practice with us everywhere we go, in every interaction with my colleagues, with administration. Then I'm going to want to walk in excellence, because I'm going to want you to know that I carry my work with me.
Yeah.
And that's a reflection of me. And so in that, when I pursue other opportunities that continue to challenge me and help me grow, I do it from the lens that this is adding to my practice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do this monetary exchange whether or not someone sees my value, because I know my worth. And my worth is totally different than how someone values, because if you're always going to go on what somebody's value you, you're never really going to own and understand your worth. So I still walk tall, very tall in my work, and I walk very tall in knowing that that is my practice and it is personal.
That's awesome. I love that. I may have to steal that. Own your practice and make it personal.
Just cite me as the source. That's it. And anyone else listening.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Loretta, it has been absolutely fantastic speaking with you and allowing you to just share part of your journey on your personal mastery. And I don't even know, would you say that, and I'm probably going to answer the question, but would you say that you're through? Or when you talk about personal mastery, is there an end to it, or is there just a journey?
I don't know the destination. As I kind of stated before, I didn't know nephrology. I mean, I told you everything's connected, right? And so now as I'm moving into the work in diversity, equity, and inclusion for the association, I'm also moving forward in my professional career as well. And it's just these pieces that just keep connecting, and the world evolves. The world's evolving, and I want to continue to evolve with it. So I will sit back and settle down whenever there's no need for me to evolve anymore. And I'm thinking at that point, I'll be a statue somewhere or a memorial somewhere at that point. But yes, hopefully. Or have my name on the building, College of Nursing.
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you. Thank you, Loretta, Dr. Jackson Brown, for joining us on this episode of Nephrology Nursing Perspectives. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Take care. Good night.
Nephrology Nursing Perspectives is owned and produced by the American Nephrology Nurses Association. All rights reserved. No portion of this podcast may be used without written permission. Dr. Loretta Jackson Brown began her nursing career as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force, rising to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Dr. Brown is the Senior Health Communications Specialist and Team Lead Education, Campaigns, and Implementation for the National Center of Injury Prevention at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Dr. Brown is a leader within the American Nephrology Nurses Association, having served as a Southeast Vice President on the ANNA Board of Directors, chaired the ANNA Leadership Development Committee, and having served as an author for ANNA publications and for the Nephrology Nursing Journal. She currently serves as chair of ANNA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and is a member of ANNA's Dogwood chapter in Georgia. Ms. Lillian Pryor is Senior Manager for Medical Education for CVS Kidney Care. A member of the American Nephrology Nurses Association since 1990, Ms. Pryor has served in roles that include President-elect, ANNA Director, ANNA Awards and Scholarships Committee Chairperson, ANNA Representative to the Kidney Health Initiative Patient Preference Task Force, and an author and peer reviewer for the Nephrology Nursing Journal. Ms. Pryor served as the 2020-2021 President of the American Nephrology Nurses Association. In addition, she is an active member of ANNA's Dogwood chapter in Georgia and has served the chapter as both its president and health policy representative. For archived episodes of this and all ANNA podcasts, and to learn more about the American Nephrology Nurses Association, visit annanurse.org. You can also subscribe to Nephrology Nursing Perspectives, NNJ Extra, and ANNA's 50th Anniversary podcast series on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, our hosting site Spreaker, and everywhere podcasts are found.